Today's show is brought to you by Hopsterette.com. Grown in the esteemed Yakima Valley on the Pewterball family farm, Hopsterette.com offers the widest variety of hops available online at incredibly competitive pricing. It's simple. They grow hops, they sell hops, and they ship hops straight from their family-owned farm to your doorstep. Producing the highest quality hops is Hopsterette.com's passion, and they're proud to be an independent grower in the craft beer industry. Go to Hopsterette.com right now and get what you need to make your brew day better. That's Hopsterette.com. Today's show is brought to you by Imperial Yeast. You hear us gushing over Imperial Yeast all the time, and that's because their yeast performs for us in every batch that we brew. Imperial Yeast is adored by commercial breweries and home brewers alike. Their pitch-right pouches are jam-packed with over 200 billion fresh yeast cells, guaranteed to deliver flawless, fast fermentations every time. Imperial Yeast strains are grown by a team of pro brewers and home brewers who live to help other brewers learn more and ferment better. Join any recipe receiving tier of our Trub Club and get a free upgrade to premium Imperial Yeast with every recipe kit that ships out to you. Learn more at homebrewhappyhour.com/club and come brew with us.
Entertaining shows with content that spreads information and sparks discourse throughout the community. This is the Pearl Media Network.
Adding volume markings to your brewing equipment, yeast trub affecting your gravity readings, delayed fermentation due to low temps, and New Year, new beer resolutions. This is Homebrew Happy Hour, episode 312. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. This is the show where we supply the answers to your homebrewing questions and discuss all things related to craft beer. If you have a question you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, go to homebrewhappyhour.com, click on that submit a question link at the top of the page, or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. I am your host, Joshua Stubing, joined as always by my co-host. He is the Director of Operations at CM Becker over there, Mr. James Carlson. James, my friend, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing, Josh?
I'm good, dude. It's just us. I forgot Todd's off today. He's making his way to my neck of the woods. Well, actually, North Austin. I think Bauman lives. Bauman says he lives in Austin, and I think it's Round Rock. And that's like me saying I live in Austin, but I'm in San Marcos. But right. Todd's coming this way because Bauman's daughter is getting married tomorrow, right? Friday.
I believe so.
Is, right.
Is it Friday or
Saturday?
It is
Friday. It's not a New Year's Eve. It's the 30th. Yeah, because Saturday is New Year's Eve. So I forgot. I called Todd this morning about something, and he was like, dude, I'm off. What are you calling me? I was like, oh, yeah, you're off. Because I was just off. I took off Tuesday and Wednesday. The offices were shut down Monday for the holiday.
Right.
And I believe y'all are shut down tomorrow, right? For the holiday, because we're going to be in.
No, we're coming in.
You're in Friday, okay, but we are in Monday as well. Just letting listeners know we are doing inventory though, so I'm not quite sure how that. Yeah, I'm coming.
I hate inventory.
It's not fun.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you for coming.
Oh no, anytime I can help. I always feel like when I'm up here, I'm like I'm helping, like Ralph from Simpsons. I'm helping, but I'm not. So anytime I can make an appearance, and I know inventory, it's. I know.
It's terrible.
Yeah, it's no fun. Start off the new year. Like, we have a final question today about New Year resolutions. Never do inventory again. Just because I'm bad at breaking.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Wouldn't that be wonderful, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So we all are open tomorrow. Okay, I don't know why. I thought Todd told me y'all were shutting down Friday for the holiday. But good, you're open. That means people. Good, no, perfect, because that means people can still take advantage. I say that. Whether the offices are open or not, kegconnection.com's 10% off site-wide, 40% off some keg kits, 25% off all the other keg kits, the Herms kits, all these stuff on bid discounts, year-end sale is going through Saturday. That's the final day you can take advantage of these deals. Segueing that into, you can get an additional stackable 10% off if you send photos to help@ketconnection.com or tburns@ketconnection.com or joshua@ketconnection.com of your wedding dispense setup. Todd's articles did go out in January. Just sending the photos that are relevant to an event or a wedding, some kind of live situation that you were serving draft beer at. If you have photos of that, send it to one of those inboxes. You're going to get a 10% off coupon that does stack on any site-wide deal. So if you do it sooner than later, you're going to be able to stack that on top of the deals going on now and get the best possible deal. And again, as long as you live in the contiguous U.S., you get $9.95 flat rate shipping. So all of that stuff for the small talk for Todd's part, I got covered. Yes, site-wide deals, Todd's wedding article. What else was I going to put? What have you brewing? Todd was teasing me about how you're not going to get any of the best Kolsch ever, and I reminded
No,
him.
I got you a keg of the not alt.
Yeah,
just sitting here, cold, carbonated, ready to go.
Woo! I'll take that with me next week. Yeah, that's the last beer you brewed. Do you? I mean, I'm not trying to jump early to get into brew resolutions and all that. Do you have a brew day plan coming up? Or
I thought about brewing tomorrow, brewing some pressure pills.
You should.
Yeah, just depends on how the day goes because it's just me here. So
yeah,
Todd's gone, and Lana's gone.
Oh, that's got the right. Girls. It almost is quite literally you. I mean, running the show, it is literally, oh my gosh. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Inez is gone. So it's going to be Brenda and Vilver. And
it's going to be a handful.
A few people.
Yeah, you got a few. But still, wow. Yeah. No, here, listen, Todd's not here. Sometimes he lets me make decisions. Just close tomorrow. And I'm kidding.
They go over like a lead balloon.
You're right. But
hey, I don't know if you looked at the weather, but it's absolutely gorgeous. It's going to be gorgeous fall weather this weekend.
Yeah, right now it's a beautiful day here in San Marcos. It's 71 degrees. It's 1 p.m. in the afternoon, Thursday the 29th. I can't complain about that. I'm wearing my hipster gear because I was devoted to Todd. Let me tell you a story real quick, not to divulge too much or not to digress too much, even though that's what I do best. We have a store. If you go to homebrewhappyhour.com, go to merch. It's through what used to be called Teespring. I think it's now called Creator Spring. We don't get a lot of, like the way it works is we set up products and then we get like a 15-20% off of what it actually sells for because we don't have to have any overhead. But what they're really good at is giving me credit to do one-off designs. And so I made, I'll go up to the camera quick. I made this Sasquatch design in Japanese. Kebukai Otoko means hairy man. That's supposed to be me.
Is that you?
Yeah. Obviously, it's way too tall to be me because it's Sasquatch. But so I made this. I wore it the last time I was up there. Didn't say anything. I wore it around Todd and his dad. And Todd looks at that sweatshirt and he goes, "Boy, I've seen you in some stupid things, but what is that sweatshirt?" And I was like, "Oh, it's like this mythical sumo legend, Todd." And he's like, he's obviously too smart. He was like,
"Let's see the purple hat."
Yeah, the purple hat with Homebrew Happy Hour's logo on it. And then the state of Texas right here. So he goes, "Why is the state of Texas on it?" And I was like, "You're asking too many questions." And Todd's dad, though, my favorite was he just looked at me and he goes, that is interesting.
And it's Texas A&M brew.
It is. I did. That's why I got it. So we've mentioned on, I think last week, how I stole my Pops A&M sweatshirt a decade ago. I saw him at Christmas, obviously, and he was like, "That's where it went," because he watches the show. He was like, I was watching them on that show, and I go, "That sweatshirt looks so familiar." And then 5 minutes later, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I stole my dad's thing." So anyway, I think that's about it. What I have for the small talk. Let me get this on the screen real quick for viewers, boom, or listeners. If you still got a few days to join our Trub Club, join at the recipe receiving tiers, and get the delicious James Brown Ale shipped out to you, featuring a pouch of Imperial, their strain House. I'll just say the strain House from our friends at Imperial Yeast. They're the ones who provide our yeast month to month. We greatly appreciate Imperial. Also, like people heard on the ads, Hops Direct, you're getting fresh, great hops from Hops Direct. I believe your recipe uses Willamette, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And then coming up soon, I was given permission by this vendor to talk about it. Muntins is hopping on board in early 2023 and will be the exclusive grain provider for Trub Club members. So
that's so cool,
dude. I'll bring up.
I still can't believe you pulled that off.
It was mainly Todd because I didn't follow up. I got the conversation going, but I'm bad at follow up. And Todd was like, dude, always be closing ABC. You got to follow up. And I was like, well, you got to follow up. It's not ABC. But anyway, okay, boss. So I did. We got that, and they're sending us a sample thing. I believe that's supposed to arrive right after the new year.
Okay.
On our call, I told them, like, guys, we know your product. You don't even got to send us samples. We can just, they're like, no, we won't do it the right way, or however English people talk. I pray to God they don't watch this show.
The Daniel, right?
Yeah. No, Andrew and I forget who else was from them, but they're like, I don't think your podcast's very funny. Is it? Or I don't know. I'm sorry.
Well, which one is the guy that walks around in the suit? That's
Phil.
Oh, yeah, Phil. That's who I'm thinking of. Is Phil? Yeah.
No, Phil. Yeah, no, Phil's not a decision maker. He's a grunt like me. But we love the people at Muntin. Their products are great. Well, like I said, I'm looking forward to it. We've always been fortunate to have good, fresh ingredients sent to us, and it's great to work with a supplier like Muntin's, because we know their products. And I believe, I haven't talked to them exactly, but I believe they're giving us access to their full line, because we had mentioned on the show before, and I had reached out to some members who are getting extract recipes, like, hey, we might have to stop it, because James, I'll let the audience know, ingredient cost skyrocketed on us. Everyone's raising their cost.
Yeah.
It's skyrocketed, and it's specifically DME and LME. It's skyrocketed, and then shipping cost skyrocketed. So someone pays, to get every month recipe of a 5-gallon kit, they pay $50. Which is a great deal at the end of the day if you don't mind someone else curating your recipe for you. And it's a great way to support us. But what was ending up happening now, because we haven't raised the cost, we had talked about doing it this time last year and we didn't. Todd was like, no, I don't want to, because we had a bunch of people, people want to support us and they want to get something in return. We're trying to make it as mutually beneficial as possible. Long story short, though, we're guys, Homebrew Happy Hour is not a money-making endeavor. We are not making money. And the recipe part, we're not making money, because after we ship it and get all the ingredients and everything, it was like $48 per kit.
Yeah, it's like barely break even or slightly under.
Sometimes we were losing some money when we ship up to our friends in New England. We love you, and we have a lot of New England people in the Trub Club getting recipes. But yeah, more times than not, we're not making money. I'm trying to get FedEx to be a sponsor of the show.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Wouldn't that
would cover everything?
Wouldn't that be hilarious if I?
Yeah.
Then boom. Then we could turn around and put some money back into this show, because Trub Club could be profitable. But anyway, yeah, but I just like being transparent with people when we are when they reach out, but some people are like, oh, I was hoping next month y'all could do this triple hazy, this, some thing that would cost us $80 in ingredients or something. And I'm like, our recipe, look, the Celebration clone was not an affordable recipe to send out, or not a cheap recipe, or however you want to say it. But
no, the grain bill's kind of high on that.
Very high, and a lot of hops and whatnot, but we still do it. We're not just sitting, every month we're doing cheap. No, these are solid. Go look at, if you join Trub Club at any level, you can still go see what we've shipped, or if you want a list of what we've shipped, I can give it to you. We're still sending out, the highest quality, delicious recipes that we're brewing ourselves too. So it's not just something like, let's make something quick and easy. These are our favorite recipes, and it still lets me design artwork. That's one of my favorite things to do. So the whole Trub Club thing's been a blast. But if you want to brew with us, let me put it back on the screen. The James Brown Ale, go to patreon.com/homebrew happy hour, or you can go to homebrewhappyhour.com/club. See all the different ways you can support us. Someone did remind me recently that I don't bring it up enough. We have an Amazon affiliate link at homebrewhappyhour.com/club. And So this is me mentioning, if you use that link, it doesn't cost you any additional money, but we do get a percentage of what you order. And as far as I know, it doesn't tell me what you order. So if you're one of those weirdos that gets like high dollar weird stuff, you don't want anyone knowing, we're not going to know. But if we do know, I'm going to let you know. I'm going to say, hey, who ordered the weird lingerie for, weird edible beer panties. But anyway. So yeah, all that stuff aside, I do believe that covers our small talk portion, which means it's time for listener feedback. We've got a full show of 4 questions and some listener feedback. It's from our buddy Jonathan Marut. It's basically the Marut Minute this week with some feedback on what he does to combat teaser condensation and liquid buildup.
Hey Josh, it's Jonathan in Fort Worth. I'm filling up kegs in the garage. I wanted to give you guys a call and give you a little bit of feedback from your last episode. There were some questions about condensation inside of a kegerator and how to deal with that. And I found a new toy recently that I would highly recommend for everyone. And you can use it for this and for several other things too. And it's nothing more fancy than a wet dry vac. And the one I got was one that was sitting on the curb that somebody was throwing away, because you don't want to use your good wet dry vac for this. You could use an old busted wet dry vac that doesn't have any wheels but still works. You take the filter out because you're going to use it in wet mode, and then you could use it to suck liquid out of lots of things. So you could use it to suck out your kegerator if it's got a bunch of water sitting in the bottom of it. The other thing you can do is when you're cleaning out your Grainfather or your Solo or anything like that, anything that, you get to the end of your brew day and you've got this big pile of junk, hops and hot break and all that stuff sitting in the bottom of your kettle. The easy thing to do is suck that all out with your wet dry vac, and then you can start your clean in place process and you have a lot less matter to deal with. So that's just a little suggestion for folks to try out. I hope you all are having a good time. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We'll see you.
Thank you, Jonathan. That's a great idea. And like you said, definitely has to be not your good wet dry vac. Like you don't want that Trub particles and hop particulates and whatever, like messing up your dry. I say that those are actually pretty easy to clean out.
I wouldn't be afraid to use the one that I have, because I keep it outside under my pellet stove, because I don't know if you have a pellet stove, but you've got to clean it out fairly regular because it gets full of ashes from the pellets. I never thought about doing that on the Brautag.
It would work,
because
right?
I take it completely apart. Yeah. If we could do CIP on that would take about 30, 45 minutes off the brew day.
Seriously, right? And it is clean in place is one of those things that I don't think it's a trouble to set up, right? But it's just like, well, I'll just drag it over here and clean it out instead, as opposed to, because you have to have a drain where you're at, I assume, for a proper clean in place. And what y'all do actually, what is stopping y'all from doing it? Is it possible to set that up as a CIP, or is it too many moving parts?
There's too much particulates that we have to get off, so it's easier just to take it apart and bring it out, not disassemble, but remove the cattles from the elements in the sensor lines. Bring it outside, scrub it, rinse it, bring it back in.
Yeah. So
that's what we do. But I know when we got the spike system years ago, they had a video on clean in place. And it seemed to me like it didn't save much time, because you still had to dig all the particulates out.
No, I remember the video. I mean, I remember, like you said, it was like, oh, it's marginal. Like for that particular time where you're like, yeah, we'll just keep doing it how we're doing it because it's working. Because again, I can't reiterate this enough on the show. Whatever works for you, keep doing that. But yeah, it is a wet dry vac would help a lot of people out, especially you see, like Todd's teaser, liquid buildup there. Just, no, okay, done. But we did this. Topic has yielded probably the most listener feedback of any topic. I've gotten 35-ish voicemails, and so that's why, like last week, I'm telling y'all I will use it as long as it's differentiating. But leave us some questions. I'm getting dry on voicemail questions. I love the listener feedback. I'll use it when I can. And but for some reason, a lot of people have had our same experience, or the listeners' experience with, man, I'm getting some liquid buildup. What do I do? And there's a lot of solutions out there. So that's been encouraging to see our audience respond as they are with that. Like last week, it was a damp rid or dampy rid or whatever it was called. And there's a lot of
dehumidifier.
Yeah. There's a lot of different things to different approaches. I think Todd was going to buy that product and give it a try to give it a review. So we learn new things every week. So Jonathan, thank you so much for submitting that question. A good time to remind you, if you leave us feedback by voicemail or submit a question through our voicemail hotline at 325-305-6107, you do get a $25 gift card to ketconnection.com, courtesy of the absent Mr. Todd Burns. If you email it to joshua@homebrewhappyhour.com or use the submission form or text us at that same phone number, you still get a $15 gift card, which I think is pretty good. So our first question of the week is a text message from our buddy Preston, and he using the hotline at 325-305-6107, and he wrote, is it possible to add volume markings to a foundry? The larger foundry starts markings at 5.5 gallons. What if I wanted to brew smaller batches? Adding volume markings for as little as 1 gallon is what I'm going for. Don't want to ruin my foundry. Is this possible? And I wanted to mention, Preston, every time you wrote the word is, it was capital in both. I don't know why. I felt like he was yelling at me. Is it possible? But James, you have had to make a stencil for the Brautad stuff. You are no stranger to adding volume markings. First off, is it possible on store-bought equipment to just make a stencil and do it? Or is it a headache? Like, what's the process for someone if they're wanting to add more markings than what comes on their vessel?
Well, there's a bunch of products on Amazon. The one that we use is actually a machine. And so we use a machine that has it's a positive grounded or a negative charge machine that we've got acid, and the acid, along with the voltage, it actually deposits and etches into the stainless steel and leaves we do all our graduations on the Brautag here. So when we get the kettles in from the manufacturer, we have to literally put the logo on the kettle, put the graduations on the kettle, and we've got a whole machine that does it. Now, that was fairly expensive. And you know, if you're just wanting to add it on one piece, go on to YouTube and see what some other people have done. There's some people out there that's figured out ways of doing home etching at home safely. And I think it would be worth checking out. I think if you do it, I've seen some people, when we did the research on this, we saw one guy and he was using tape. Basically, you just want to expose the area where you want to mark or etch. So if you're doing graduations, you'd probably want to either cut the graduation out of a piece of tape, like painter's tape, and then lay it on and make your mark, lay it down, and then use your chemical etching to make that. I wouldn't use paint. I wouldn't use ink or anything like that. It's got to be chemical. You've got to be able to, when you etch it, you're actually taking a layer off the top of the stainless steel and it stains it. So that's where you get the etching, but it's it's very microscopically small, but enough so you can see it. So it's so small that if you took a red Scotch-Brite, you could scrub it clean off. But there's I remember there was a lot of useful information and do-it-yourself at home videos on that on YouTube. So I would suggest go into YouTube and type in chemical etching and or chemical etching process at home on stainless steel. You'll be surprised how many videos there are of that.
Well, in chemical etching, because like you said, like you don't want to just get in there and start scratching into a stainless steel. But I mean,
you wouldn't be able to see it. I mean, you just want to stain it and etch it to where you can actually visually see it.
Okay. But and also I worry, is there any, what sanitary stuff do you got to worry about? I mean, if you're doing like what you did, like you said, full context for everyone. When James was doing it, it's because he was doing it to tons and tons of cattle. We needed something that could be fast, didn't take a ton of time. So that's why y'all spent the money on that huge setup that you did, because you were just like assembly line of just doing it. and all that. But for the home user, you know, we've seen solutions of like the handheld etchers, right? But in a kettle or in a foundry, because that's what this question is specifically about, that might be hard to get in there at an angle with the handheld one, right? Of etching.
The thing about it is, if you're marking the stainless steel, you're not staining it.
Gotcha.
So it's going to be hard to read. So I chemical etch it, or acid etching will produce the dark line that you need to where you can see it. So that's what I would do. Is I would look. You would want. We use a type of acid with voltage, and what it does is it removes the very top layer of the stainless steel, and then blackens it at the same time. So that's what you could do. But there is a lot of resources on YouTube about people at home that's figured out a way of doing it without buying a huge expensive machine.
Now, let's talk about, because people listening who are new, and maybe they're totally new to all-in-ones or new to all-grain brewing, when does the volume matter in regards to needing to know it beyond just, I have a gallon jug and I put a gallon in? Like in the like the volume doesn't matter when the grains are in, but it does matter before you put the grains in, because that's your volume to mash ratio. Like
water to grain ratio.
Your water to grain ratio has to, so that it matters then, and then it certainly matters at the boil. What small about, like he's Preston is talking about wanting a marking as little as 1 gallon. Is there, I mean, even if you're brewing at a gallon thing, you're never going to actually be that low ever in the process, right?
Right. Maybe is it in the kettle, the boil kettle, or the mat? I don't know which system did he say was using.
He's using the Anvil Foundry.
Okay.
And so the electric all-in-one from them. Great.
Oh, okay. All-in-one. I was trying to figure out which one that was.
Yeah,
okay,
sorry.
If it's an all-in-one,
yep.
They probably, my best guess on that was he would want to know what potential loss, as far as batch loss.
That makes total, okay.
On that.
Okay.
So if he's got a gallon left, then he can accommodate for that loss when he's doing another batch. So if he knows he's losing a half a gallon with every batch, then he can compensate for that with the recipe and the water. So he gets a full 5 gallons, and it's not diluted. The gravity's where it needs to be. The body's where it needs to be. He doesn't have to either boil it down or top it off. He can dial his recipe in for what his system is using and what it wastes.
Interesting. And so again, not to beat a dead horse, but you're beyond just like not being able to see it well. If I got in there and etched myself, not chemically, but is there any sanitary concerns too if you do it that way? Like you're opening up?
No, I mean, you're just marking. You're marking the metal. You're scribing the metal, but you wouldn't be able to tell.
Right.
I mean,
well, you're going to boil off anyway. It shouldn't be a concern, right? Okay. Yeah. I'm just thinking about it because I've not ever, so I usually fill up 5-gallon carboys, the plastic ones from the water supplier. I have a ton of them. I'll go to the Glacier ice filling station. They just bumped it up to $2.50 for 5 gallons. The jerks. It was $1.75, but so because I don't have an RO thing, that I'm jumping the gun real quick. That's going to be part of my brew year resolution things we talk about later. Put RO and a sink in this garage. But anyway, I've been going there in 5-gallon increments, and then I have another 1-gallon thing. So if I have to get more precise, this other thing's a 1 gallon and it's marked at a half gallon. So if I need for my strike water 7.25, right? I can. It's still an eyeball. It's not exact. And then when I get it in the G40 or whatever, I can kind of. It's still always at the end of the day. It's always an eyeball for me. Of like,
I would also caution that it's not that sensitive, guys.
Okay.
If you're out there and you're trying to dial in within a quart or a pint, don't get that's splitting. That's milking mice, as far as I'm concerned. The objective is gravity when you're done. And sparging, getting the sugars out, but I think you kind of takes the fun away if you're going down to every little bit of measurement. So I'm sure there's probably going to be somebody that disagrees with me on that, but I just think that after we've been brewing beer, I mean, are you really concerned with volume?
But I'm not concerned about anything. That's the problem. Yeah. I'm so laissez-faire, like whatever.
This not alt was the last one that I did. The guys that listen to the individuals that listen to this podcast know that I put my recipe together, and the scale didn't check it. It was set to kilograms, not pounds. So everything was out of whack. So what I did was went ahead and finished filling the recipe out in kilograms, mixed it all good as good as I could get, and then weighed out in pounds how much it should be. Well, obviously it didn't work. It had a little bit too much the darker roasted. It's not bad. It's not an alt, but it's not bad drinking. That would be an instance where, if you're doing the recipe, you probably want to hit it just exactly how it's made. But
Right.
I just made a good something out of a bad deal, and it came out fine.
It came out
and
great.
I think,
yeah.
yeah, and I think a lot of times don't get what I'm trying to say basically is don't get buried in the minutia.
Totally.
Have fun.
Yeah.
When you're mashing, if you say, James, I didn't get my 1.5 to 1 water to grain ratio. Well, did it circulate? Yes. Did it create sugars? Yes. Were you able to get the temperatures where it needed to be for mashing? Yes. In the end of the day, if it didn't stick, which means stop circulating, it created a good product and you were able to drink it and enjoy it. That's the way you do it.
That's a win.
That's how we live and learn.
I agree completely, man. That we could clip that out and put some inspirational music behind it and make it 2023. That's the message of 2023.
Yeah, have fun. Make a mistake or two.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, I learned a lot more from making mistakes than I ever did trying to do it the correct way. You learn a lot because it sticks in your head easier. Plus, I've come up with some pretty cool beer.
Yes,
making a mistake but don't forget to write everything down, because if you mess up and you create something special, you want to be able to duplicate it.
Yeah.
That's
shout out to note
soapbox.
taking, right? Shout out to note taking. You've told me that many a time where you're just like, I'll call you freaking out or something, and you'll be like, "Well, write it down. Write down what happened. Write it down.
Definitely write it down. Make a note.
Put
it on your phone. Everybody's got a cell phone with a notepad. Do it that way, and that way, if it turns out exceptional, you'll know how to do it again. Well,
that batch of breakfast stout, not the one y'all took, but the one we kept, was one where it was in the G40. The batch I gave you and Todd was brewed in the cooler brew, and it turned out great, but it was done as traditional as we've done it before. On the G40, the software corrected me for my grain bill after I'd already mixed it up and all that. It was like, oh no, this is way too much. The system can't handle it. Here, we'll just scale it for you. And I was like, oh no, Dad, I did all this already and it's all mixed. What are we going to do? Because I'm not we're in the bag. I can't guarantee the same ratio of the different specialty grains and the base malt and all that. What are we going to do? And called Todd, because my dad was like, son, let's just mix it up really good and we'll weigh it. I have this ability to weigh it to scale it down and we'll just go from there. I was like, no, Dad, you're an idiot. I'm going to call Todd. Todd was like, I would just mix it up really well and then just weigh it what it's supposed to be. And then I was like, oh, sorry, Dad, you're not an idiot. And it worked out great. At our Christmas party, dude, I've never seen more people drinking coffee stout in my life and my family.
That's awesome.
Both nights, my mom's side, the Mexicans loved it. And then my dad's side, the white people loved it, which I assume, look, not to be pseudo-racist, I'm half Mexican, guys, before you give me a 1-star review. I thought the Kolsch was always a hit with my mom's side of the family, as it should be with everyone's side of everyone's family. But I had some cousins, or the boyfriend of my cousin, drinking the crap out of the coffee stout. Like, this is really good. I was like, thank you. And then the next day, all my dad's side, I saw more coffee stout being poured than ever, which I was like, do they not like my Kolsch? But then I thought, more Kolsch for me. They're not all drinking my Kolsch. This is great. But no, the beer was a big hit. But my point being, like, that brew day on paper could have been a disaster. And people loved it. It turned out great. Like, that is when you plug in Charlie's slogan, relax, don't worry, have a homebrew. If it's drinkable, fantastic. Congratulations. You've made beer. It's we as humans, I guess we can take ourselves too serious, right? And that
sometimes we tend to make things a little more, or seem to be a little more complicated than they actually really are. So.
Absolutely. Right. And like you said, you don't have to beat yourself up, and you don't want to stop having fun, because then you'll burn out. And that's the worst thing, is if you stop having fun brewing, then you just don't want to brew. And
don't fuss over the small details. Just have fun and and learn from it. And don't forget your fundamentals. That should never change. You know, sanitation, cleanliness, the process that you use, try to do that the same every time. But as far as, you know, I have to have a 1.5 to 1 water to grain ratio. No, not really. If it's working at 1.25 or even 1 to 1, I don't do 1 to 1 on recirculation because it tends to be a little thick. So, you know, I just want, as long as you have real good circulation, you're gonna get more efficiency out of your grain bed than if you're at 1 to 1.
Yeah,
a little extra water is not going to hurt at all.
Absolutely.
You know?
So wrapping up your question, Preston, because I made us go down tons of rabbit holes or tons of trails in the single rabbit hole, one might say. Yes, it is absolutely possible to add markings to it. Chemical process is what James recommends. YouTube is your friend because there are videos dedicated specifically to what you're talking about wanting to do. And it doesn't have to be a ton of money spent on it. And there's a ton of different processes that can help you get there, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect.
There's chemicals out there that'll etch the stainless steel that you don't need a machine for. So just check it out. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Absolutely. So Preston, thank you so much for submitting that question. A reminder again, guys, text or email to 325-305-6107. You get a $15 gift card. Or if you leave a voicemail like our buddy Zach from Michigan did to our hotline at 325-305-6107, you get a $25 gift card to ketconnection.com. Let's listen to our second question of the show from our buddy Zach.
Hey guys, hope you guys had a white Christmas, sounds like. Love hearing you guys talk about the cold weather as we're up here in the north facing negative temperatures. My family had consistently negative temperatures as well as wind chills of close to negative 50 with drifts of snow up to overpasses on the interstate. So hope you guys are safe and sound down there. My question is on taking measurements. I know Todd's got his fancy gravity measurement, but when using a hydrometer or even a refractometer, does kettle trub impact the readings at all? Oftentimes I forget to take a reading right away, and the clean beer that I'm left with is just the kettle trub. Or sometimes I'll take measurements from the spigot of the fermenter, and a lot of yeast will come out from the yeast cake. And I was wondering if there are any impacts of the yeast suspended in the liquid on the readings at all, or just anything in general, yeast, hops, kettle trub, whatever. Let me know what your thoughts are. Just trying to hone in my process here. Thanks, guys.
Great question.
From Michigan.
Oh yeah. He had to tell us who he forgot to do that. First off, thank you for your concern for us down here. It is, I mean, what y'all are dealing with in the north, that's just normal.
Yeah, like we were 8 degrees and people are freaking out.
I was freaking out. I was the one. Yeah, my wife's family's from Michigan. Her cousin I was visiting. And shout out to Mike and Shannon. I drank Busch Light all weekend, James.
Wow.
I know that's what they had, and I didn't go to the store, and I was like, no one's.
It wasn't bad.
Yeah, but a
lot of corn.
That describes it. A lot of corn. A lot of corn. But no, I was grateful that they're sharing their beer with me, and they're really nice people. But from Michigan, they're down there. Or they come down here, rather, pardon me. And I think the last day, yesterday, before we left the valley, it was like 78 and just beautiful day. And they're just like, we don't want to go back because it's 5 feet of snow drifts and the conditions and all that. So yeah, but Zach from Michigan, it's a great question about the readings of your gravity and what can affect it. I know one of the things I never considered. We'll get to your answer, Zach, but let me preface it with some digression. Temperature is a huge component too of getting an accurate gravity reading, and I've used that converter on Brewer's Friend frequently to make sure, like, oh yeah, I got to plug in. When I get a reading using a standard hydrometer or whatever, I need to tell this calculator what's the temperature of the wort and then what my reading is, and it's going to convert it and be like, oh, well, your actual reading is 1049 or whatever it might be.
Yeah, keep in mind that's on a hydrometer, a floating hydrometer.
That is on a floating hydrometer, exactly. Yeah. So and he talked about hydrometer and refractometer. What are the things that make a difference when using either device that you have to take into account so that you have the correct number on paper from the reading?
Well, if you're floating a hydrometer, you got to make sure to do that temperature adjustment. There's calculators online. Most hydrometers have a piece of paper that comes with it so you can adjust up or down. I think it's based off of room temp. So I think they're considering the correct readings on the hydrometer at room temperature, which is 70 degrees. Could be wrong, but it says that with the paperwork with the hydrometer.
Yep.
Other than that, it's just sugar. So when you introduce sugar dissolved into water, it affects the gravity or the way that hydrometer floats, and also the way the refractometer. It's basically refracting light through a prism. And the sugars affect where it hits that scale. So if you got hop trub in that and you're using a refractometer, it doesn't matter. It's light through the liquid, and the sugar affects how the light bends and hits the table that you're looking through the eyepiece. And the same thing with floating it. If it's got sugar in it, it affects the position of the hydrometer or the position of the way it floats. So it's all about sugars dissolved in liquid. If you got particulates in there, don't think it would make a whole terrible big deal in the reading. It's all about the sugars dissolved in the liquid that causes the readings on both a hydrometer and a refractometer.
So in the flow,
and you don't have to worry about temperature with a refractometer, because once you put that on the lens, it goes to room temperature instantly. So
with the floating, you're not. I mean, obviously, you're not trying to get yeast cake and blah, 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 the poopy Trub.
No.
But I'm saying, but you're saying normal, average person, not Neanderthal, not Einstein, right in the middle, us average guys who know, like, yeah, I'm gonna get a little bit of particulates in there or whatever, and this is another don't worry, relax kind of situation.
Yeah.
That's what I always assume,
I would suggest always have both, and I have both when I brew. When I do my starting gravity, I use a refractometer because it's not affected by alcohol. There are charts in there that you can pull up and you can use a refractometer, but it's not as accurate as floating a hydrometer after alcohol's been created in the wort, and the wort actually converts into beer. So that's why I use a floating hydrometer on final gravity, and I use a refractometer for starting gravity, because it's not as accurate because there's alcohol in there, and it can certainly affect the way it reads.
And I don't expect an answer because I don't own the device and you don't own it. It's Todd's thing. Jonathan's going to have to leave feedback or something because he's the one who showed it to Todd. That Easy Dens, I know it's not a refractometer, and obviously it's not a floating hydrometer. I forget. It's like vibration based or something, from what I understand.
Yeah.
I believe that kind of tech takes all of that other stuff into account in regards to it spits out the right number for you. But worst case scenario, you could always still get a temperature. Like if you were worried about, because like you said, on a refractometer, you don't got to do a temperature adjustment because you can put it on there and the number is trustworthy.
Yeah.
But for I'm making up a statistic. I was going to say 99% of the time. Someone's going to write back, it's actually 92%. But you don't have to worry about it as much. On a floating, it definitely does matter. The temperature of it can affect it by a few points.
Definitely affect the density. How it's floating in the liquid is affected by temperature as well. So, that other thing that Todd has, I think let's be honest, that's a $300 piece of equipment.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are going to say, that's nothing. I'd be concerned. I'd put that into grain before I would put it into a piece of equipment.
Yeah. And you're speaking for yourself. Literally, James Charleston, will put that into grain. You're like,
no, I'm not. I buy a whole bunch of malts and make more beer for what that. And I'm totally cool with refractometer is your friend. Those things are worth the money. I think you can buy them for less than $50.
Yeah, they're cheap.
And they work real good when you're brewing. I use mine during the whole brewing process, when I'm mashing, when I'm sparging, because when you're sparging, you don't want to go below 10, 15, 10, 10, and you can see where you're at and then say, whoa, that's enough, and I want to over sparge. But you can also see, it's funny how when you're watching it like I do, when you start the mashing, you can see, because it's recirculating back into the mash tun. I can take a drop on it and see where I'm at 15 minutes and then at 30. And it's amazing between 30 and 45 how much it jumps up. So, and also you can maybe possibly find a potential problem if you just don't see those numbers rising. That's why I love a refractometer, and it's not as messy.
I'm gonna say it's very clean versus trying to get your floating, like your tube it down there to then put your floating hydrometer in. It is easy to use. Now, I will say this: I know people listening might go, "Gosh, he takes a lot of readings." No one takes more readings than Todd Burns during
That's
any.
true.
That guy is taking. You're like, I like to take one at the 15. He takes it like in 5-minute increments. I've never seen a person
Plus,
take more readings.
The temperature readings.
Oh, yeah. You're right. They almost go hand in hand with him because you've calibrated your brow, Todd, and you do an initial. I've seen you check it. You're like, oh yeah, you check it a couple times throughout the brew day, whatever. Todd's checking it like when he's doing the refract, like he's checking all the time, and I'm like, Todd, it says right there what it is. I don't trust technology, Josh. I don't trust it. What are you talking about? You don't trust.
He literally stands over it for the most of the mash.
He really
and
does.
He'll just sit there and monitor, and he'll do offsets on the controller, which means offsetting the temperature to match what he's getting.
Yeah.
But, I don't take it that deep because I know that, first of all, those temperature sensors, they can vary a little bit. But if you're once again milking mice on the temperature, kind of take a little bit of the fun away from it. And it's just something that I do the initial, the Brautag that we sold last week. What I like to do is I like to brew a batch of beer on the controller with the sensors.
Yep.
Because as I've stated many times, I build the controller by hand. I have every unit and we test them, and I put a little label on the inside, put the date, what I did. So this one I didn't have, it was, we were trying to get out and do Christmas. So I did I did a wet run, but without grain.
Yeah. With
so
water.
I did the HLT, fired it up, and then I did the recirculation through the mash, and then did the boil and all that. And the whole time I did the offsets on each sensor, because sometimes they can change. Each sensor is a little different. You can get I've had some sensors that were dead on, I didn't have to change. And I've had some that were 4 degrees off. So just depends on the system and the sensor. And, I once I test it and I see it's fairly consistent, that's it. Every now and then I'll double check it because they can change over time. But for the most part, if it's calibrated and it's working fine, then I just don't sweat it.
That's where I like to mess with Todd, because he uses the people from Kessler are great people. We've had on the show. We sold their products before. Their thermometers are great, but I'll be like, Todd, you trust that how do you know that doesn't need to be calibrated? Oh, it's lab calibrated. But your logic, you're not being consistent, man, because over years that could also, get off a little and whatnot. And he's just like, Josh, you don't understand. And we just leave it at that. Live and let live, whatever. But yeah, the guy takes a gazillion readings.
He'll do multiple thermometers.
Oh,
too.
I know.
You notice that?
Yes. Yeah. The floating, and then the handheld lab, and then the digital. Yeah.
He's a mad scientist for sure.
He is. Where on our brew days, my pop will pull out, I got this at an estate sale for $2 and use it. And like, it needs batteries. Let me get my other $3 estate sale. I got him a candy thermometer, one for liquid and stuff, for part of his Christmas gift. And I'm hoping that one it was super high reviews, had like 20-something thousand positive reviews. And I was like, look, we have one, Dad, we can trust. But I also trust when we're using like the G40, or if we're getting the Brautag or whatever, I trust the equipment to an extent. Like, I don't need to take multiple readings. I take one, be like, oh yeah, it's right. And then boom, the rest of my day, I am not worrying about it. But again, guys, full discretion and transparency, I don't worry a lot. Don't let the balding fool you. I don't stress a bunch. That's just hereditary.
The only thing that I noticed, I was, talking about this, is the those infrared heat guns that you can shoot. I've noticed those can go way off.
Can they?
From what actual readings are, and I
I've never
would
used
say if
one.
you're using one of those, just make sure, check it with a regular thermometer and see what the difference is, because I have seen those they've been as high as 5 degrees off.
Oh, then that's not good. When remember
and there's no way to calibrate them either.
No, there's not. The worst one we had, that prototype on the spike. I don't know if you remember. We didn't realize till the boil that day it was off like 8 degrees because we thought we didn't test it after we went through its calibration cycle. It was me and Kenny's fault at the end of the day, or actually Kenny wasn't even there for the calibration cycle. Ultimately, I think it was Todd's fault. He's not here to defend himself. It was Todd's fault.
So you're talking when you went through the auto tune on that?
Yeah, and remember too, my biggest complaint about it, and I don't know how the new one is, and we love Spike. This is not a slight at them. I've only heard good things about the production version of the Solo, and we love their trio systems, and we love their fermenters. They're great. But the one thing I hated was the calibration was like this convoluted hold up for 3 seconds, hear this weird noise, up, down, left, right, BA start. Like it was a Nintendo cheat code of going through this calibration where it wasn't just straight. We're like, what I love about the Brawl Todd is it's very straightforward offsetting. If you have to calibrate, it's very straightforward.
You just let it run. And I would encourage anybody that's got one, when you get it, just fill it up with some water. They fill up the HELT with some water, put about 13 gallons in the mash, fire everything up, and then just start running temperature readings. Then do your offsets. Once you do that, then you can, I would even go so far as get into the kettle. Cause I've seen those any sensor needs to be calibrated. The only way you're going to do that is take a thermometer, take a reading, compare to what the display says, and do your offset.
And then
correct.
Yeah.
And once you got all that done, then check it every now and then. But for the most part, I think you're good to brew.
Yep. So Zach, wrapping up your question, the in a floating hydrometer and all that, as long as it's not super thick, don't worry about it, man. It's some particulates, some Trub gets in there. Live and let live. You're gonna be fine. The temperature might be a bigger factor on that than the Trub collection would be, assuming it's not again some big dump cake of Trub. But on the refractometer, James, you're saying, well, first off, don't throw Trub on the refractometer, but you get the sample on there, and then boom, get your reading, and you're good to go.
Yeah. It's just measuring sugars and suspended in the liquid. That's how it reads. So yeah, you'll be good.
So moving on, thank you again, Zach, for submitting that question. Our third, you know what? Actually, I forgot. I'm going to make that our last question, the text message about brew year resolutions. And then, so let me take actually the next voicemail. So our third question is from our buddy Brian from Cross Plains, Texas.
Wow.
Hey, good morning, guys. This is Brian over in Cross Plains, Texas, your neighbor. I've got a question. I brewed a Kolsch on Sunday, and I put my fermenter in a room where the heater quit working, and the temperature of the Kolsch got down to about 57 degrees, and it is not bubbling yet. I've got the temperature up to about 61 now, but still no activity on the bubbler. So my question is do I need to get it warmer? Do I need to repitch my yeast? I used Imperial Dieter yeast, and just kind of wondering what I should do from here on. Oh, and by the way, Josh is the nicest guy I have ever heard on any podcast. And I've listened to at least 3 or 4 of them. Thanks for answering my question.
3 or 4 of them. I like it.
Wow. Cross Plains literally is just like right down the road from Duster, Texas, where I live. Yeah. That's pretty cool. Yeah. I didn't know anybody in Cross Plains was brewing beer.
You probably don't remember him by name, Brian. When we were in the ingredients business many years ago, or many moons ago, he came by before. He would get recipes from us. He's kicked the can with us a few times. Just cool. BSing. I have a black belt in small talk BSing, if people don't know that already. So
that's awesome.
We'd have to talk about that. But yeah, now where I took his question, one, he's great at sucking up to me. But with a hybrid ale like a Kolsch, being on the lower 60s is not usually a bad thing, because like Dieter especially, I actually have to get a pack of it. I believe 60
Actually, you know what? Let me look that up and see what the lowest temperature. I think you could just get it. What I would do is I would just get it to 70 degrees room temp and see what happens. Shake it up a little bit.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, but as high, and then when it starts fermenting, would you go back down a few degrees, or would you leave it there?
I'd probably just let it go to town.
Yeah.
Let it get to high crowds and
at 70.
Yeah, it's room temperature.
Yeah, because I think the low end is 60 for Dieter. And I fermented this last batch. I put the room at 63, knowing the difference, but like the discrepancy.
Yeah, you're right. It's showing 60 to 69.
Right.
But if if it was mine and I saw that, it wasn't doing anything for a couple of days, I'll probably get it to, 69, 70 degrees, shake it up, what we call rouse the yeast. So swirl it and get the yeast off the bottom and see, I bet it'll come alive. If it goes a whole week and there's no activity whatsoever, then you probably need to repitch.
And I was going to follow up and ask, what is that magic number? I mean, if it's been in the high 50s, low 60s now, a week, you don't got to worry about infection. Too bad, right? Assuming everything's closed.
It is definitely possible because it's sitting there with sugars. But if it's in a sanitized container with an airlock and we have a good seal, I think you should be all right. But what I would do before a repitch is I would gently pull a sample out and do a flow to hydrometer to see where you're at. We've had times where there was no activity in the airlock, and it just because there was not a seal. It was fermenting, we just couldn't tell, or it's fermenting so slow and it wasn't sealed off tight enough that you couldn't see any activity. I remember Nancy, who used to work here, she did one of her first all grain beers. I think it was a red beer.
It was a red IPA.
Yeah, and it absolutely had no activity, and she was kind of disheartened about it. And I said, well, you hold off. Let's see where we're at. It was completely finished.
Yeah, I remember.
And it was a good beer.
Yeah. Was that not the one that you Texas boys? Was that not the same red beer we're talking about?
Oh, that's hard to tell.
Sorry. Anyways.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what I would do is I would do a gravity reading, gently pour some into a sample and float a hydrometer and see where you're at gravity wise. I mean, if you might be surprised, it may be halfway done or more than done.
Now, I will say this, though, if it is done, there would be some evidence or remnants of krausen, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So if
he's got a clear fermenter, if he's got a glass carboy and there's nothing in there and there's no cake at the bottom, then definitely probably need to think about warming it up, trying to rouse the yeast to get it going. And then the worst case would be a repitch. Mm-hmm. That's why we always mention, put some Safel 05 in the freezer. Yes. And it's a good backup just to save a batch of beer if you've got stuck fermentation.
You read my mind, dude. I was going to say this is when 05 might come to save the day because it's not Dieter's fault that the temperature got too low for it, but you can still save your batch by putting some 05 on top if you have to, and just sprinkling. You don't got to hydrate it or nothing. And then when you're adding it there, are you still rousing or are you not because of now the kind of introduction of oxygen as you're opening up your vessel? You've
got to be careful. I mean, you can sprinkle on top.
Okay.
And then I swirl. I don't shake.
Okay.
So, but keep in mind, oxygen's your friend when it hasn't fermented.
Oh, good point. That's a great point. You're right. The yeast
have to. Yeah, the yeast need the oxygen along with the sugars to create the byproduct of CO2 and alcohol. So you want to oxygenate the wort before you pitch your yeast, for sure. But if you have to repitch yeast, give it a good swirl and try to rouse what you have, and pitch on top. That's what I do.
I will say I'm gonna maybe I need to bottle one with a beer gun or something. I told Todd not to toot my own horn, and then I started tooting my own horn because every time you have something like a preface like that, you're gonna do what you're. I don't want to brag, but then I start bragging. This latest batch of Kolsch is phenomenal. I love how it turned out. So straightforward. And it did I'm air quoting for audio listeners, it over finished. I mean, it went beyond 1010. It finished at 10.8 or 1.008 or whatever. And
that's pretty dry.
It ended up dry. I loved it. Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
It turned out great. And because I just let it keep going, I saw it bubbling and I was like, man, this is like day 4. And normally Dieter finishes like after day 3. So I was like,
it's such a good, versatile, clean yeast.
Good, clean.
I used that on that Not Alt, and it came out. It finished at 1.009.
Yeah.
and it came out. But I think that would have tasted a little better with a little more body and sweetness. I think it would have been better. It's still not bad. And
I love it.
I tell you, I was drinking it this weekend thinking, what does this taste like? If it had just a little more sweetness and body, it'd taste just like a Versteiner Dunkel.
Oh, which is arguably the best Dunkel commercially available.
I love all their beers.
Their Pilsner
is the best made.
Yeah. No, their Dunkel, I first had it. Todd's going to be laughing. He doesn't listen to the show. Oh, he does when he's not on it, so he'll hear it. I came back from Epcot one year, back when my family could afford Disney trips, but and I go all the time. I came back from Epcot. I was like, dude, I had the best Dunkel of my life, and I think he even answered me before. He goes, "Was it Warsteiner?" Because he just knew it already. It was on draft at the German Pavilion. I believe it still is. It's especially this time of year. Just the maltiness of it makes the cold weather makes me like maltier beer more.
Absolutely.
That Dunkel is fun. It's a great cigar beer. It's a great.
Believe it or not, you can get the Versteiner Pils here in town, and then you can get the Versteiner Dunkel in De Leon at the shopping basket. Should not be sitting on that shelf. I don't know.
Wait, did you request it, or they've been ordering it?
No, I walked by one day and there it was. So I got everything off the shelf. I was like, wow, I can't believe this. They have Hofbrau Pils.
Who's their buyer? You got to high five the guy. Let's get him on the show.
It's really surprising. Funniest story, and I'll make it short, but I was in there the other day getting groceries, and I stopped by, and there was two women standing there staring, trying to make a decision. And I said, "Oh, excuse me." And I grabbed all of them off the shelf. And the lady looked at me with daggers.
Because you're an alcoholic.
And she said, "We just got it all. I was going to get it." And I said, "You snooze, you lose, ma'am." And I started laughing and I walked off.
Did you really?
But I thought she was playing with me. But I looked back and she gave me a go to hell look like you wouldn't believe it. And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were razzing me about that." And she didn't say anything, turned around, walked off.
James, don't resolve the story with you being nice guy. I'm tired of nice guy James. I wanted the story to end at, I said, "You snooze, you lose," and I walked off. That's how I wanted that story to just be final in my brain, because that's the best. That's
I did not
best.
mean to do that anyway.
Oh, I would have done that. That's
Maybe
great.
I
And just strut it off. You snooze, you lose, you snooze. Yeah. And so wrapping up Brian's question, I think the best advice I can give is that if you can, every time it's possible, stay within the range of what the pouch of yeast that you're using says. Whatever that range is where you want to be. Now, like he said on the Kolsch one, 61 is on the lower end of it. That's why you might not be seeing activity right now. Give it a rouse, warm it up, like James said, even up almost to 70, just to try to waken this thing up and rouse it. Worst case, get you some 05. Brian, being a brewer, probably has some 05 in his freezer or fridge, whatever.
Yeah.
And throw that in there if absolutely need be. But yeah, you're the one who told me that, James. Like, hey, I would ask you, like, where should I be fermenting? You're like, dude, just read the pouch. Read. And so that,
every strain is different.
Every strain is different.
And you want to always follow the manufacturer's recommendations, because you want to produce what that says it will do. And a lot of times, if you use it, if you're colder than you should be, then you got super slow fermentation, and then it'll stall out. If you're warmer, you can create off flavors that weren't intended. If you're doing and we found that with pressure fermentation, that's not as big a deal, which I love, by the way. That's everything I've been brewing here in the last few months have all been pressure fermentation. It's awesome. I know I did that not alt on a Friday, came to work Monday. It was finished.
That's incredible.
I cold crashed it that day.
It served it Friday.
Kegged it. It was carbonated and fairly clear that next Friday in 7 days, which is amazing.
It was phenomenal.
So it's a game changer for me.
Absolutely. So Brian, thank you so much for submitting that question. Final reminder, when you leave a voicemail, guys, to 305-6107. You get a $25 gift card to kegconnection.com. Or if you leave us a text like our final question from our buddy Robert, you still get a $15 gift card. Robert wrote, "Hi, Josh. I love the pod. Listen every week for many years. Hope you all had a wonderful Christmas. My new beer resolution," I see what you did there, Robert, "is to brew more lagers, probably under pressure." Speaking of the devil, James, what do you plan on doing in 2023? Any tips for lager brewing? Let's start with the latter, since we just you talked about your batches of being under pressure. What would you suggest for doing lagers under pressure?
Get a splending valve. You can do lagers at room temp. I do it under pressure. It works great. Creates really good beer. That's all it needs to be said.
I was going to say, it's so straightforward. Like, I love, I want to romanticize and mystify some things, but get a spunding valve, get a vessel that can handle pressure first. How about that?
Yeah. Definitely get a fermenter that's designed to work under pressure.
Yep.
You don't want to do it with a fermenter like the SS fermenter with 4 little wire bale clamps. Yeah, it won't work.
Yeah, the brew bucket would blow up. It would not be fun. Or even the Blickman.
Definitely not
Blickman.
A glass carboy.
Not
so
glass.
You don't. Yeah, you definitely want to have a fermenter designed for pressure fermentation, but there's some out there. What the one that we use, the clear one, what's
the Firmzilla?
Firmzilla.
Yep. Or Anvil. I use the Fermenter King from Anvil, great product. I use the Firmzilla. Y'all use the CF15 from Spike.
Yeah, Spike. Boy, their splending valve.
That new spunding valve. Holy moly.
And it worked great.
Yeah, that thing's awesome. That's fun. That all-in-one PRV.
Yeah. If you've got some of the older Blinkman conicals, stainless steel conicals, do not even attempt to do that because they weren't designed for being under pressure. Can't stress this enough. You need to research the equipment you have or you're buying. Make sure it's designed for pressure. That's very, very important. If you get something and you try to use a splunding valve on something that's not designed to hold that, you could seriously hurt yourself or cause some pretty bad damage in your brew room. Absolutely. Because it'll explode. So that's very, very important.
It'll be catastrophic when you find out that it wasn't meant for pressure. But back to the top of his question. I hope I did have a wonderful Christmas. I forgot to ask you in the small talk. How was your Christmas? Was Santa good to you? What'd you get?
I didn't get anything.
Shut up. Hey, I
didn't get anything. Well, I seriously did not get anything.
No.
Yeah.
James.
Yeah. So
I'm calling your daughter.
I didn't
have
my daughter. She was with her mother for Christmas.
Okay.
And so I just chilled out at home and watched some football. And Gracie and I just chilled.
I saw the photo you sent. Gracie could not have looked more cozy in her spot on the couch next to you. That was hilarious.
She's my shadow for sure.
It was. I'll boast then. Talking about what our brew resolutions are for 2023. This is not beer related at all, but one of my resolutions, I told my wife, I was like, I'd like to probably just stop smoking cigars altogether. No, I'm kidding. Where I'm leading with this because my dad listens. He got me one of the Wood Ronix 150. It will hold like 150 cigars in this bad boy. I'll put the link in the show notes. It's so cool. He got me a humidor, a proper one for my office. I would pan my camera over there, but my office is a wreck from Christmas stuff. But it looks great on what I call my Mad Men shelf, which is a bunch of booze and now cigars. But I would like, tying this back into the show, not just bragging that I got a cool humidor. I would like to get experts of different fields, like with food or with tobacco or whatever, because beer pairings, you would be shocked at how many questions we get, usually by email or text. I've gotten a few voicemail ones of people asking like, hey, I want to get into like deeper pairings, and my dumb answer is always like, Kolsch pairs with everything. You don't gotta, or like just you and I, especially of the trio, are very transparent about like, we are just having fun. These are our opinions, blah, 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 blah. Todd's that way too, but he's not here. But when someone asks me like, well, what do you think would pair good with this? All I have to go off of is my palate, right? Like, well, you know what? I think, and so it's not necessarily scientific explanations, where there are people out there, at least convincingly enough, are professionals about like, Oh yeah, Josh, you know what? You've been smoking these dark, full body Maduros with your Kolsch. If you'd actually try drinking this with it, and here's why, that'd be cool content for the channel. I'd like to produce more.
I would think a darker beer with the Maduro would be better.
I would too, but Kolsch goes with everything, James. And I think that would be great content though for 2023. That's kind of my main priority in this year is getting some more experts on for not necessarily the weekly podcast, but for other content to add to the channel that's not just the weekly podcast. So that's my resolution. Also, after brewing the breakfast style and the Kolsch kind of close together, I forgot how fun it is to brew with my dad. I'd like to brew more with him.
That's great.
We have two of those. We have the Firmzilla and the Fermenter King. I told Todd I'm going to pick up at least another one of those Brewzillas or Firmzillas, pardon me, if not two of them, because I want to brew more with my pop and be able to do them under pressure, not have to worry about lagers at colder temps, doing them at like 70. And because you've made me a believer of the pressure pills. That pressure pills that the first time you did it, it wasn't crystal clear after like 5 days, but the fact that it tasted as good as it did in 5 days from brewing to serving, and then it cleared out a week later to being the like perfect pills, where I was like, I cannot believe how clear it was pouring out of Todd's kegerator 11 or 12 days after from you brewing it. It was phenomenal. It was incredible.
It turned out really well. It had that Pilsner bite to it.
It was incredible.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah,
that's the next beer I'm going to brew, but may not get to do it tomorrow.
So do you have any specific brew resolutions or craft beer related resolutions for 2023, or much more of just the same?
You know me. If I could just brew one beer, it'd be a Pils. That's my thing now.
Oh, hold on though, because I've gotten feedback where people tell me, guys, there's more than German lagers. No, my brew resolution is for you to start brewing kettle sours and hazies. James, that's
not going to happen. Not gonna happen at this juncture.
I will tell you this, part of my content resolution that I said, I forgot to mention, I do have people who are experts in those fields lined up for the first quarter that have offered to come on the show. And so we will be covering content on styles that are foreign to us or not our favorite ones, but we know the reason I always say it's the best time to be alive as a home brewer is because whatever you're into, there is it exists in regards to, I want to try a funky raspberry, this or that. And like, well, someone's brewed it. And here, there's an expert on brewing sours with fruit. And we can put that person on the show and they can answer your questions about these other styles. But I will say, when it comes to German beer, James is my guy to go to for the knowledge. And then I just consume it. But anyway,
that's good. That's my favorite. That's my go-to.
Mr. Carlson, Happy New Year, my friend, coming up this weekend. I'm going to be there Monday through Wednesday, so I'll help with inventory, recipes for...
Yay.
It's not too late to get on board for the James Brown Ale, the James Brown Ale, if y'all want. I'm going to be shipping those out Tuesday because Monday is inventory, but they're going to go out next week, and then next week's episode will announce the January recipe kit for Trub Club. All that information is available at homebrewhappyhour.com/club, or join directly at patreon.com/homebrew happy hour. Mr. Carlson, I appreciate your time, my friend. Have a great rest of your week. I'll talk to you later.
See ya.
And that will do it for this episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. If you have a question you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on that submit a question link at the top of the page, or leave a voicemail, be our best friend at 325-305-6107. For the best hops available online, give our friends at hopsdirect.com a visit and pick up what you need for your next brew day. Also, get a free pack of Imperial yeast along with premium recipes from us when you join our Trub Club. Go to patreon.com/homebrew happy hour and come brew with us. On behalf of the absent Todd Burns, James Carlson, and the Pearl Media Network, I'm Joshua Stubing. Thanks for listening.